Welcome to Unspoken Affairs. When we were alone without parents, what happened will surprise you. You think you know your family, the people you've grown up with, the ones you've eaten dinner with, argued with, laughed with, and trusted your entire life. But sometimes the people closest to you carry secrets you never expected, and sometimes those secrets change everything. I'm Emma Collins, and this is the story of the summer that changed my life. The summer that tested my relationship with my brother in ways I never imagined. And the summer that taught me how fragile trust really is. I remember the day my parents left as if it were yesterday. The morning was warm, sunlight spilling across the driveway as Dad packed the last suitcase into the trunk of the car. Mom kept fussing over details, lists of emergency numbers, instructions for groceries, reminders about locking the doors at night. They were heading to New York for a week-long conference, both nervous and excited. And for the first time, they were leaving Jake and me alone to handle the house on our own. At 22, Jake was confident, charming, and had a way of making everyone around him believe he had everything figured out. At 20, I was still finishing up my junior year at the local university. Quieter and more cautious. Always the one trying to balance things out when Jake's boldness went too far. As the car pulled away, Jake stood at the door, waving with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Looks like it's just us now, Em," he said, his voice carrying a mix of excitement and something else I couldn't quite name. Freedom at last. I smiled, but inside I felt a strange flutter of nerves. Freedom sounded fun, but it also sounded heavier than I was ready for. At first, the week felt like an adventure. No one telling us when to go to bed, no parents reminding us to clean the kitchen or asking where we were going. We ordered greasy takeout, stayed up until sunrise watching movies, and even pulled out old board games from the attic just to laugh about how competitive we used to be as kids. For a little while, it felt like a chance to reconnect. Just be brother and sister again without the weight of school and responsibilities pressing down on us. But then things began to shift. Jake grew restless. The smile he wore so easily before was replaced by a distracted frown. He would disappear for hours and come back smelling faintly of cigarette smoke and something stronger whiskey maybe. One night I asked where he'd been, and he just shrugged it off, forcing a laugh that didn't feel real. "Nowhere important," he said. "Just out with some friends," but I could tell he was hiding something. At first I convinced myself it was nothing. Everyone goes through stressful phases, right? But as the days passed, his restlessness grew harder to ignore. There was a heaviness in the air between us, a tension that made me feel like I was tiptoeing around someone I thought I knew, but no longer fully understood. Then came the night of the storm. The rain started in the late afternoon, heavy drops tapping against the windows. And by the time evening settled in, thunder shook the walls of the old house. When the light suddenly flickered and went out, the silence that followed was broken only by the sound of the storm raging outside. Jake and I lit candles and sat on the living room floor, trying to laugh about it, telling stories and remembering the summers we spent chasing fireflies in the backyard. For a while, it felt almost normal again. But then Jake grew quiet. His face, half lit by candlelight, looked older somehow, weighed down. "Emma," he said after a long pause, "there's something I haven't told you." My heart skipped. The seriousness in his voice cut through the storm outside. He told me he'd gotten involved with people he shouldn't have while at college. Parties had turned into habits, and habits had turned into debts. He owed money more than he could handle, and he didn't know how to get out. That was why he'd been acting strange, why he'd been sneaking out, why the confidence he usually wore like armor had started to crack. For a moment, I just sat there, stunned. I didn't know whether to be angry at him for keeping it from me, scared for what it meant, or heartbroken that my brother, the one who always seemed invincible, was quietly falling apart. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He shook his head. "Because I didn't want to drag you into it. I thought I could handle it, but it's getting worse." That night, the weight of his confession pressed down on me like a storm of its own. Suddenly, our week of freedom wasn't about movies and takeout anymore. It was about survival. From then on, I paid closer attention. Every time his phone buzzed and he stepped away to answer, I wondered who was on the other end. Every time he left the house, I wondered if he was digging himself in deeper. And then Ryan started showing up. Ryan was Jake's best friend from college, a guy I'd always thought of as easygoing and harmless. He was funny. He had a way of filling a room with energy, and for a while I was relieved when he came around. Because at least Jake seemed happier when Ryan was there. But it didn't take long before I started noticing things I couldn't ignore. The hushed conversations, the quick glances in my direction when they thought I wasn't paying attention. And then one night I overheard them. I had gone to the kitchen to grab a glass of water when I heard Ryan's voice from the living room, low but sharp. "You can't hide this forever, man. You've got to pay them back. If you don't, they're going to come after you." My blood ran cold. Jake's reply was barely audible, tight with frustration. "I know, Ryan. I'm trying." My hands trembled as I stood there in the dark hallway, realizing the debt was worse than I'd been told. Worse than I could have imagined. That night I lay awake, the sound of the storm still echoing in my memory. The truth was unraveling faster than either of us could hold it together. And I didn't know what would happen if the wrong people came looking for Jake. As the days passed, Ryan's presence became more unsettling. He would drop by unannounced, linger in conversations he wasn't invited into, and make comments that left me uneasy. One afternoon, he even joked in front of me, saying, "Man, you and Emma have been acting weird lately. Like, what's the big secret you're hiding?" His tone was light, but his eyes were sharp, as if he was searching for something. Jake brushed it off, but I could see the tension in his jaw, the way his hand clenched into a fist at his side. By then, the house that had once felt like a safe place full of memories now felt like a cage. Every creak in the floorboards made me jump. Every knock on the door made my heart race. I started avoiding phone calls from Mom, afraid my voice would give me away if she asked too many questions. But secrets like that don't stay hidden forever. One night, I finally confronted Jake. He was sitting on the edge of his bed, his face buried in his hands. "We can't keep pretending everything's fine," I said. "This is destroying us. It's destroying you." He looked up at me with eyes that seemed years older than he was. "I know, Em, I hate what I did. I hate that I let it get this far. But I can't just erase it." His words sank deep, and I realized then that there wasn't going to be an easy fix. The worst part wasn't just the debt or Ryan's suspicious questions. It was the way trust between us had cracked. It's the way I no longer looked at my brother the same way. He wasn't just Jake, the confident, untouchable one anymore. He was someone broken, someone carrying more than he could handle, and someone who had let the people closest to him down. Yet even in the middle of all that chaos, life outside went on. Friends talked about summer trips, new jobs, and plans for the semester ahead. To the world, it was just another summer. But to us, it was the summer everything shifted. Slowly, painfully, Jake and I started to rebuild something. It wasn't perfect. There were nights filled with silence, mornings when we barely spoke, and moments when anger flared up between us. But there were also times of honesty, times when Jake finally admitted everything. Piece by piece, and I chose to forgive, not because it was easy, but because family isn't something you throw away when mistakes happen. Looking back now, I realize that summer taught me more than I ever expected. It taught me that trust is fragile, that secrets can break even the strongest bonds, but also that forgiveness has the power to mend what feels impossible to fix. Our story isn't perfect, it's messy. It's tangled with mistakes and regrets, but it's also about growth, healing, and the hope that even the darkest chapters can lead to light. If you've ever had a family moment that changed you or carried a secret that weighed heavy on your shoulders, you know how it feels to wonder if things will ever be the same again. But sometimes it's in those moments when everything feels broken that we discover who we really are and who we can count on when the world feels heavy. Thanks for listening to our story. If you've ever had a secret that changed everything or a family challenge that surprised you, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Remember, family isn't perfect, but sometimes it's the hardest tests that prove just how strong those bonds can really be.